The Florida Weather Center, I'm meteorologist Joe Lundberg.
All right, 19 minutes before 11 o'clock. Thank you for tuning in. I think we might have a guest on the phone. I apologize for the technical stuff. Everything's pretty much back in order at the radio station after the storm, but not everything. So hopefully the phone lines are working now. Sam Lightner Jr. is a researcher and historian, an avid climber. He was published in Outside Magazine and most international magazines on climbing. He is the subject of a feature in the National Geographic magazine article. His book is called Heavy Green. Oh my gosh. Okay, I didn't realize what I was getting up to. Okay, this is the book about the Ho Chi Minh Trail. And oh my gosh, I was reading all of his credentials right there and forgot that I already knew about this book. Okay, Heavy Green. I just put the picture of the cover of the book on the streaming broadcast, podcast, whatever you call that thing. Sam Lightner Jr. Good morning, Sam.
Good morning. Sorry for the delay.
That's okay. Where are you? Where are you calling from?
I am calling from Lander, Wyoming. We're in the middle of the state of Wyoming.
Thank you for calling in and putting up with our little problems we're having here. Tell me, are you a Vietnam vet?
I am not a Vietnam vet. I was actually born when the operation when Operation Heavy Green took place. I was about 6 months old.
Oh, okay. Yeah, you wouldn't have been there at that time.
No, I didn't serve. I have an awful lot of friends who served, and my life has revolved around the sport of climbing. I grew up in the mountains of Wyoming, and I've been a mountaineer all my life. And I came across this story researching large rock faces of a particular type of stone that we climbers really like to climb on. And I started learning about this story because I was trying to find out about this rock. And
wow.
The story had been kept under wraps. It was top secret information until 1988, and I started looking into climbing, possibly in Laos, in about 1990, and that's when I found out about it, and it just became a focus for me over the years. And my writing career was also built around climbing, and I eventually just decided, I'm going to write a book about this one subject that, I've written a number of books, but this one had been on my mind for years, and I sat down and just started working on it one day, and sure enough, it's doing pretty well.
Wow. So what was the decision, or what led to the decision to intermingle historical facts with a storyline?
I wrote a book back in 1999 called All Elevations Unknown. And it was a combination of us climbing this mountain on the island of Borneo and a series of World War II battles that took place around it, the same mountain. And I wrote the story of us climbing, and then every other chapter was writing, of a battle and something that ties the two together.
Okay.
And I was going to do the same thing about the particular mountain that's in this book, but the Laotian government has not wanted me to climb that mountain, and then I've run into other problems trying to get to that mountain, so I never got there. And finally, last winter, I was just sitting there one day between writing projects and said, I've done fictionalized history before, historical fiction. I'm just going to create characters. And I thought I wanted to create characters that explained the larger picture of the war. Because if you're my age or younger, you never get to learn it in school. What you learn is from movies and so forth. It's a taboo subject for teachers to go into, right?
Yeah.
So
and I think it was such a politically slanted era regarding reporting the facts about this war that I don't know that we got a true story, even if you were of age. I think a lot of us didn't get the whole story. I don't think I knew much about the Ho Chi Minh Trail.
I think it's still evolving, actually. There are some so-called facts that, were from the left that were taken as gospel, and then there were facts from the so-called hawks that were taken as gospel, and the truth is probably somewhere in between.
Yeah,
and you just sort those, you sort that out over time. but it's a subject that's left a scar on America, and we don't really talk about it. And so I thought, all right, I'm going to write a book that explains the war to my generation, but it's going to be entertaining, and it's going to be built around this particular secret event that took place.
Wow.
And that was the goal, and I think I achieved it, and it's doing well. But it's a character-driven novel. However, every single event taking place in the book is real, right down to the descriptions of what the American embassy in Laos looked like in 1968, and things like that.
Somebody who has been so involved in mountain climbing, it's kind of easy to see when you have reached your goal of climbing a mountain, because okay, here I am, I'm at the top. It's easy to see. To reach your goal in writing a book like this, that's not always easy to see, because you don't know how it's being received from those who've read it. For the listener's sake, I want to read one of the 5-star reviews, and there's in fact, there's nothing less than a 4-star review on here, and 84% of these reviews, this is Amazon, are 5-star reviews. Here's a 5-star one I wanted to read. I think it's important to read this one. This is a guy, Carl Wattenberg Jr. He writes this: as a former Army intelligence officer involved with the Vietnam War, Lightner's Heavy Green is not only well-researched, but accurately portrays the enemy, the best army in Southeast Asia, and the growing importance to North Vietnam of the Ho Chi Minh Trail as the war escalated, telling the story of Americans and of the friendly forces supporting the covert U.S. effort to restrain the trail's invasion to the south through Laos, is indeed superbly well done and is heartily recommended for all. You can't get a better review than that.
No, I couldn't ask for a better review than that. And being Army intelligence too, and
right.
I've since talked to a woman who was in Air Force intelligence at the time, and she said she read it in 11 hours. She just sat down and started, and
oh wow,
and couldn't put it down. So and she was actually dealing with pilots who were involved in it. She never got to see the mountain that is the feature of this, but she was seeing photographs of the mountain and was giving information to the pilots that were flying around it. And she loved it. So it made me feel really good, because those are the people that I really want to like the book. They served, and they were at risk, and some of them didn't come home. And I would just like for them, those who did come home, to say, you know what, he captured it. He did a good job with that. So
why does it take from 1967 to 1988? Why does it take so long for this information to be declassified?
I believe it's a 20-year. First, the government has certain protocols, and I believe they put 20-year periods. They can block things easily before the Freedom of Information Act or whatever can grab a hold of it, and that was the maximum length of time that they could just say nope, it never happened, even though there were thousands of people involved in it.
What does the title refer to? Heavy Green. What does that mean?
That Heavy Green was the operation, the overall operation that was taking place. Essentially, what we did was we put a air traffic control system on top of this very steep mountain in northeast Laos, so that we could direct bombing raids around the city of Hanoi in North Vietnam. And the program of directing raids, both that way and through a system that's called a TACAN, it's similar to what helps aircraft land at modern airports. That was called Operation Heavy Green.
Okay.
So it's the operation name from this deal, but our system was so effective at directing the bombing raids that the Vietnamese realized they had to get rid of the mountain, and we realized it was peaking in its ability to disrupt weapon flow. It was peaking during the Tet Offensive, so we had to keep it going, and things are going to climax when both sides realize they've got to make
Yeah.
they got the thing working.
When a movie maker finds a good book, and yours is perhaps one that they're looking at, I don't know if you've had any calls yet from movie makers, but there are those movie makers that take great care to make sure the story is told in a 2-hour film, based on a book obviously can't be completely covered. If Hollywood comes knocking on your door, are you going to say yes?
I am, because I believe that, even when they say take too many liberties with the stories, often the story becomes more popular with the general public, and people look into it. So even when they kind of screw it up, I'm trying to think of a movie offhand that was screwed up by Hollywood, but the public winds up learning more about the operation and realizing, that actually took place and it actually happened like so, rather than the way Hollywood did it. So I would listen to Hollywood. I certainly wouldn't want them to completely mess it up.
Right, sure. Well, one of the things I think that came out of the politicization, whatever, the politics of the Vietnam War made us look like the bad guys. Americans believed that America was the bad guy in the war, toward the end of that war anyway. So much so that the Vietnam veterans who came back were spit on, were treated poorly. I think your book helps to show that was so inaccurate to be portraying us that way. I think that's one of the great things that your book does.
Thank you. A world without war would be a much better world. There's no question about that. But we've also one of the narrations that's gone on and has been accepted as I said earlier, as a gospel, is that we shouldn't have been there. But if you try and talk to the ranking people running Thailand, Malaysia, Indonesia, the domino theory was never really going to happen. Your country was never going to get taken over. They're going to say, really? You try and live with that going on right next door.
Yeah,
it's
right.
Pretty scary.
Right.
So we did not prevent Indochina from falling to an authoritarian, and in this case, an authoritarian communist government. We didn't prevent that, but we did chew up a whole bunch of resources that the authoritarian side could use in other places, right in that area. And to say that this horrible domino effect wouldn't have happened is just a revision of history that's not. It's not well founded.
Yeah. I think Vietnam is the thriving country it is today. Unfortunately, a war had to happen, but I think they wouldn't be thriving as they are today if it was not for that war. And
possibly not.
And our contribution.
Yeah. And you know what is also what I would like to see happen with us and Vietnam is I'd like to see us be friends. I mean, this is. We're 42 years now away from the end of the war officially, 1975, and 44 years from our heaviest involvement. And the Vietnamese would really like to, they would like to have us as an ally.
I think so. Yeah.
And it doesn't help us to hold the grudge. You try and imagine what if we had held the grudge against the Germans and Japanese for the same length of time.
Exactly.
Then in 1987, we wouldn't have been on speaking terms with the Germans and Japanese.
Yeah.
Which is pretty hard to imagine. So
right.
I think it's time we try and take a different stance with the Vietnamese and say, okay, let's work towards a mutual future that's beneficial.
There were a lot of Vietnamese children at the time of the war who lost their parents and relatives, and then they had to grow up maybe as orphans or taken in by other people, and now they're adults. What do you think was in their history books when they were growing up? Do you think they're hateful toward the Americans, or do they really understand what was going on there?
Oh, I think they understand very well, and I think they their history books talk about what they call the American War. We call it the Vietnam War, and I think in history it's going to be known as the Second Indochina War. I think it's a glorified event, almost like our Revolutionary War. But and they lost, probably over 1 million people in the war. And as you said, to this day in Laos, there are still people being maimed by unexploded ordnance and so forth. The war was very much in their face. So I think that that what they've learned is probably a little bit slanted against us. However, in my experience, and I've spent a lot of time in all of these countries, maybe it's the Buddhism of and in Christianity we'd say turn the other cheek. But they're like, yeah, we fought a war that was 40 years ago. Let's move on. Let's not keep fighting that same war, because the time has completely changed. The things that we're focused on in this world have completely changed. And if the Vietnamese have something to worry about right now, it's China. It's not the United States. Right. And most people don't realize this, but they fought a effectively 15-year war with us. Though you could argue it was more like 25 years. But so they've been at war with China for something on the order of 1,500 of the last 1,800 years.
Oh my gosh!
So not continuously, but China views Vietnam somewhat as part of its territory, and the Vietnamese obviously are very independent-minded people. So they don't want that, and you see what's going on in Spratly Islands in the South China Sea now, and China's expansion there. And I'm not anti-Chinese. I'm just saying an American presence there. We get along fairly well with the Chinese, and if we got along with the Vietnamese, it might work to keep peace in the area a little bit better. Mutual friend between the two.
I hope so, and I hope that all comes to pass. I wouldn't be surprised if the book doesn't become a movie, and somehow if it enters into the mainstream culture, that it actually contributes to that very dream that you just expressed right there. The book is called Heavy Green. I have a copy of it. Call me if you want the copy I have. I found it on Amazon. It's got really good reviews, 31 customer reviews, and 5-star ratings. Oh my gosh, it's really one of the home runs of the interviews we've done. Sam, give us a website other than website. Let's see, what do I have? Amazon and Barnes & Noble. Do you have one of your own?
Yeah, SamLightnerJr.com. I've got some essays on there. I've got basically the story of how I came to find it, and a number of other things, climbing-related things on there as well. A lot of photography. But,
yeah, I'm looking forward to reading that stuff, too. Let me real quickly give the book away. Good morning. You've got the book. Who's this?
Hey, Larry, this is Tom. How you doing?
Good, Tom. You got the book. It'll be waiting for you.
Thank you very much.
You're welcome. Thank you,
the
Tom.
author for me.
He heard you. He can hear you. Sam, thank you for being on the air with us. I think you've got a hit on your hands. Good for you.
Thank you very much. I really appreciate you guys having me. And you got a lot of stress going on in the world down there in Florida. You stick with it.
I appreciate that. Thank you so much. We'll be right back.
Broadcasting from the Paddock Mall Studios, this is WOCA, Ocala, Gainesville, The Villages, 1370 AM, 96.3 FM, The Source.
Fox News Radio, I'm Lillian Wu. There's a dispute over DACA and whether an agreement was reached on the program to protect young immigrants from deportation. Democratic leaders Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi saying they reached a deal with the president on the issue last night, but the president's people saying not so fast.
He went into last night, specifically wanted to talk a lot about tax reform, which they did.
White House spoke.